During all of our meeting, you can send questions to the participants of the panel in the Q&A. The network team is going to be available to answer questions as well as the participants if you have any question about their research. This meeting is being recorded and we are going to make available at Comuá Network channel in the YouTube. I would like to tell a little bit about Rede Comuá to you and share a short animation about our work, animation video about our work. This is the agenda today. The introduction of the program, knowledge, and we start the conversation with the scholars, and then
A desigualdade socioeconômica e a falta de acesso a direitos humanos por parte importante da população brasileira representam grave risco à democracia no Brasil e no mundo. Comunidades indígenas, quilombolas, movimentos negros, mulheres, LGBTQIA+, não têm seus direitos fundamentais garantidos. Essas minorias políticas são também as que mais sofrem com a devastação ambiental e a crise climática. O trabalho de organizações de base surge como um caminho fundamental para buscar soluções para a redução das desigualdades. E a filantropia pode ser um agente de transformação na luta dessas organizações, quando investe recursos para apoiar as lutas por acesso a direitos. A filantropia comunitária e de justiça socioambiental adota práticas para potencializar o trabalho desses grupos na transformação de realidades. Da doação de recursos financeiros a diversos tipos de apoio, a parceria com organizações de base se dá pela confiança. Confiança de que essas organizações e movimentos conhecem melhor os territórios e as formas de empregar os recursos para gerar transformação social. Entre essas práticas, é importante reconhecer os conhecimentos e competências dessas organizações de base, reforçar sua autonomia na concepção dos projetos apoiados, apoiar o fortalecimento de lideranças locais e comunitárias, investir no fortalecimento institucional das organizações de base, priorizar temas ligados a grupos historicamente minorizados, facilitar o acesso a recursos simplificando processos, promover a participação das organizações em processos de decisão com doadores. A Rede Comuá nasceu em 2012 para promover a filantropia comunitária e de justiça socioambiental e conta com dezenas de organizações da filantropia independente que trabalham com essas práticas, promovendo diversidade e democratizando o acesso a recursos. Ao disseminar essas práticas, a Rede Comuá busca ampliar recursos doados e seu impacto no nível nacional e internacional. As organizações da Rede Comuá fomentam a mudança social. Conheça nosso trabalho e junte-se a esta rede.
Para vocês conhecerem pouquinho do trabalho da Rede Comuá e o Programa
For you to get to know a little bit of our work, and the program knowledge has to do with that. We select researchers, students, community organizers to contribute for the production of the knowledge in the fields of community philanthropy and social environmental justice. So our idea is to demonstrate this knowledge and different kinds of collaborations that we see happening in all kinds of territories that is engaging movements, groups, networks, organizations of the civil society, always with this focus in the agenda of citizenship, access to rights, particularly to the groups that are not being respected. And the idea is to show that this has different ways of doing it. So our meeting, we started with a samba that was made by Kleber. So this was one of the ways that the participants of the programs had to show how this philanthropy happens. So the knowledge program is part of the program of advocacy of the Comuá network. And our way is to make advocacy in the public and state sphere, and the knowledge production is one of the main pillars. We launched this program in 2023 as a pilot, and we had two main goals with that. The launching of this program, we had two main goals. I'm going to share here with you a moment. Now, our main, it was to promote the construction of knowledge through the systematization of practices, experiences, and reflections, and development of studies, and also to create a repertoire of diversified products that increase the visibility of Comuá, its member, and the community philanthropy and social justice philanthropy agenda for the advocacy. How does this program work? At this first, we had monthly meetings with the scholarship holders. We talked about environmental justice, but also brought guests to share with them, and the scholars also brought their experiences, their finds, and they were moments of exchanges and strengthening for all sides. So the idea is to bring some of that today to you. Also, these scholars were followed by mentors that was following the process, and they also participated in activities and events promoted by the Comuá network, by its members and partners, and by the production of the contents for disseminating these reflections, like in many different formats, the podcasts, the music like we saw, and there are many other things that's going to happen. In numbers, in the first phase of the program, we sent 35 invite letters. So we ask for our members to identify leaderships in their technical groups, so we could send these invitations to these people that they chose. So in the total we sent 35 letters, and we received 27 proposals from 26 people. One of them sent two, and we selected 7 people for the scholarship. So we had 20 candidate women, 1 transvestite, 21 out-declared Black, 11 LGBTQ+. And here I'm going to ask for the scholarship holders to open their camera. We are going to have Cássio, Kleber, Jazz, Ronaldo, Larissa, Mari. I'm going to apologize for Cássio, who could not be here with us today because he is in a trip, but he left some videos. So I'm going to invite part as this wonderful group who has built this program with us, and give and welcome to you to introduce yourselves so we all can know a little bit about you, about what you are doing,
Olá,
etc.
pessoal.
I'm
Boa
inviting
noite.
Lari.
Obrigada, Jonatas.
Good
É
morning.
um
Thank
prazer
you,
estar aqui com
Jonatas.
vocês, né?
It's a
Equipe Rede,
pleasure to
colegas
be
bolsistas,
here.
pessoas que estão aqui
This
chegando. Eu sou
network, my
Larissa,
colleagues,
eu sou formada em
scholars. I'm
administração
Larissa.
ambiental, mas
I'm
também
a
faço pesquisa na área de
graduate in
educação, no mestrado, e eu faço
management and
parte do FUNDEA, que é o Fundo
environmental
Brasileiro de Educação
management
Ambiental.
and
Então, nós nos
analysis. I'm
constituímos
part
no
of
dia 11
Fundea,
com essa missão de
a fund
fortalecer, né,
that
as
was
comunidades no
built in
enfrentamento da crise
2011
climática, apoiar a
to
iniciativas de
strengthen the
arte,
communities in
socioambiental e
this
cultura,
in the climatic
e a minha
emergencies
pesquisa
and
teve a ver
support
muito relacionada com a base do
cultural
Fundeia, que foi o
initiatives,
lançamento,
etc.
né, de uma campanha
And
para os
my
jovens
research
pesquisadores na
was
região do litoral
a
norte de São Paulo.
launch of a
Então, essa campanha foi
campaign
lançada no ano passado,
for
e a minha pesquisa
donators
teve essa proposta de fazer a
in the
sistematização
north
dessa
coast of
campanha
São Paulo.
em 10 áreas
My
estratégicas de
idea
manejo
was
urbano,
to
onde como
systematize
temas
this
planejamento e
campaign to
estruturação urbana.
understand the
E
different
aí, junto com a
strategies,
sistematização, eu
the
fiz também uma revisão
structuring,
bibliográfica
and
sobre
along with the
socioambientação.
systematization,
Então,
I did
tanto em textos
a,
internacionais, né,
a literature
quanto de
review
textos
about
brasileiros, para dialogar um
the
pouquinho, né, se essa experiência
donators.
do Fundeia se
So
caracterizava por
we
ser uma
could dialogue
instituição
if the experience of
fizesse
Fundea
uma campanha
was
de
part of
forma
this cycle of
robusta
donation,
no Brasil, e
or
teve essa
this
proposta
was
de
a
fazer
new
essa
field in Brazil. So we had
sistematização
the
e uma
proposal
revisão.
of do
E aí, por isso, eu estou
systematization
com
and
vocês aqui
review.
hoje.
And it's a
Vamos
pleasure
seguindo
to
aí
be
a
here
conversa.
with you,
Obrigada,
and we
Jonatas.
continue with the conversation. Thank you, Jonatas. I'm going to pass now the floor to Mari. Mariana Assis, good morning. It's a pleasure to be here. It's a great privilege to be with my fellow scholars and this audience that also came and gave their precious time. I'm 28 years old. I am a manager. I'm a law student. I work for several years for this community institute, ICOM, and I'm talking directly from Florianópolis, Santa Catarina. My research is systematize a practice that ICOM has, a practice that happens since the beginning, since 2007, that are consultancies to organizations and grassroots organizations. My idea was to systematize this and also to connect this local knowledge with the community philanthropy, to understand this interface locally in the state of Santa Catarina inside a community organization of which I'm part of. Yes. Thank you, Jonatas. Good morning, everyone who are here with us. Thank you for your presence. I'm Jess Hipólito. You can call me Jess. I'm a communicator. I'm a Black feminist activist in the Black women movement and LGBTQ plus movement. My research was in the X of communication to investigate the narrative of Black women organizations, leaderships in the North and Northeast. In the field of philanthropy, my idea was to understand which were the reflections, were the thoughts in the field of philanthropy, what these women, these organizations have reflected in the last few years, particularly about the Black philanthropy, community philanthropy. I want to bring for this for us to understand and make evident this narrative that many times are invisible due to the territorial matter. So my research focused on that, and we can talk a little bit more about that during our meeting. Thank you, Jazz. So for me, the next one is Kleber. Kleber. Hello, good morning. I'm happy to be here. I'm a little bit nervous. I'm Kleber from Belo Horizonte, Minas Gerais. I'm a physiotherapist as graduation, specialized in the health of the elders, of the elder, and uh, and and the and I'm work the organization that is the manager of the regenerative fund for Brumadinho. Right after the tragedy, it was initiated a fund to support small projects for that. So my research was for me to systematize the experience, to see how this fund was developed, to take this step by step and to duplicate it in other territories in Brazil. And the topic is promoting community funds all over the territories, particularly based, drawn upon the regenerative fund for Brumadinho. And I'm trying to do that in spaces that are closer to the community, particularly the favelas.
Good morning. My name is Ronaldo. I'm sorry, but I'm having a little difficulty following him because I am from Bahia, Vitória da Conquista. I got a degree in journalism, and for 20 years I have been intervening, working with community organizations, particularly in the realm of culture, but other fields as well. Since 2015, I am a papalaô, papalorixá, and Itacaré, Cantos das Matas, but it's more paradise for tourists because for us it is hectic. And my research in this project is called Orandudu. The object of this research is to develop a number of interviews in which we can then think about the resources and the interventions for organizations and the funds contribute to the community work that we develop. So we are organizing ourselves with leaderships, with through interviews. We are also going to work in providing a counterpoint in terms of finding our converging points, etc. And this is going to be publicized through a podcast and through a webinar. And that's it. So we can already feel the strength and the wealth that has been produced in terms of the reflections for this year. And we would like to have 5 points. First, we are going to reflect about the contributions for these organizations, these projects, the projects that were linked. The second point is to look at how this program has allowed us to understand the several practices of community philanthropy and social justice in this country. And thirdly, we are going to talk about the contributions for the field of philanthropy. What are the issues that are then talking in terms of producing knowledge for this field? In fourth and fifth block, we are talking about the contributions of communities and territories in which the participants are inserted and the contributions, individual level contributions this year, what they have represented for the participants here. And we wrap up with some final messages for panelists. And in order to start the first section, I'm going to call Mari and Lari because then we are going to be able to talk about the contributions of these projects for organizations, IPCOM, Lara, and Folveia. So these elements that we saw in these researches was to systematize the experiences coming from organizations in philanthropy. Last week, we launched a mapping about independent philanthropy, donating organizations, social justice, and human rights. And we saw that these organizations are actively producing knowledge. 80% of them are producing some type of knowledge and format, but oftentimes this reflection and this knowledge production is obfuscated or swamped in demands for reports, the emergencies that take place, and then these spaces for reflection and retrieving, revisiting these experiences are often lost. And this knowledge as well ends up is concentrated on a few people, and Lari and Mari had the opportunity of revisiting some of the experiences with these organizations. And I would like to ask both of you, in what ways have you seen these projects contributing to these internal projects of reflection? And what are the main learnings from this experience that you have helped promote? Can I start with you, Mari? 5 minutes. Well, everybody, I think that replying in very objective ways, in what ways it has contributed to an internal process of the organization to which I belong, I start from the point that I am a part of the community organization that exists for 18 years that promotes community development here in Santa Catarina, but particularly in Florianópolis. And in thinking about community development in the region of Florianópolis, it's very funny in that process because I always think like to contextualize the territory where we find ourselves. And as you have already heard, in Florianópolis is a big touristic point, one of the main capitals, most important capitals in terms of human development, to live in a technological point. But here, one amongst 5 children are in vulnerable conditions. We have favelas, in Floripa, we have, which is considered one of the most expensive cesta básicas. So in terms of a long term of community development, our strategy is to strengthen organizations and groups that have and have not a registration number, because we believe in this recognition of the work that is developed by these organizations. One of the interventions is through consultantships, through this consultant work is a service that is open to the community, that is coupled with financial donations and other training projects. And the first thing was to consolidate the concept of community philanthropy. We know that it's a big supporter of that. For years, we thought about that, resignifying this concept of assistantialism as a local practice was one of the main contributions, internal contributions of this institution. This concept also, along this time, along 12 months of research, has supported us in our strategic planning because this year econ becomes grown up. We are adults now, completing 18 years of age, and we would like to revisit our interventions. This research that has this quality of thinking and revisiting our experiences and our practices, this design, this systematization allowed us, has served as ways for strategic planning, strengthening civil society, and has allowed us to design this consultancy for civil society, systematizing and disseminating. And in order to do that, it demands time, financial resources, and we know that on a daily basis, this becomes a privilege for us who have this quality time to think about that. So it had allowed us to consolidate and visualize this evolution of consultantship, and also wondering as a developing organization if it makes sense or not. And to wonder if it doesn't make sense, what would then make sense, and to ask to these organizations that demand so much from us, these caterings, these themes that have been approached so far, and as the main learnings, looking at the concept and the characteristics of community philanthropy, understanding philanthropy, community philanthropy as a strength that is geared towards the recognition of communities. And I bring a component that is a strategy for community. So when we think about the beginning, there are many ways of community philanthropy that another learning has been the understanding the importance of strategy and organizations and infrastructure. Many of them are essential for reduction of inequalities, strengthening democracy, and many of them need to have this infrastructure, respecting these characteristics of their own value. And we think more and more in terms of sensible approaches that inside the community, how can we strengthen ourselves? Because once they are strengthened and the rights also become more, there's an insurance of these rights. And the third learning is that philanthropy, community philanthropy, is something that we have learned and during this time as organizations, that it allows for the micro. It leaves these indexes of value, medium value, and it goes inside communities. And when I talk about Floripa and I contextualize it in the territory, I'm talking about another side of Floripa, or the communities, perhaps stuff that is not shown for people like us who have been struggling for centuries in these communities. So I think that these are the initial considerations that I would like to bring to you as we start this debate. You bring important points. First, resignifying. We are still talking about a narrative dispute, and we are showing a way of promoting philanthropies that allows us to really be committed to the struggle for an agenda of rights and strengthening democracy that goes to the micro level. So talking about this knowledge production that is dealing with what's micro, microsphere, revolutionary in the context of our national philanthropy here. Let's talk about some considerations regarding Fumbeia. Hello, everybody. I think that when we talk about the main perceptions of this research, one of them was in the sense of thinking, legitimating the work by Fumbeia, this organization in Latin America that has had not had this opportunity of interventions in three pillars: financial and support, three collectives, because this campaign for last year supported 3 points, which was the collective Escambau Cultura and the collective Caetara. So this is the opportunity of looking at this practice because it's a fund that not only has then the support, provides political support, and that has brought this knowledge production from an experience that has the strength of fostering this in our region. It also brings this legitimacy to the work that Conveya has been developing. And one of the main learnings of this research, the dialogue that we established along this campaign, is that it has looked at this campaign from several angles, speaking to the collectives that have received these researches and looking at the narrative that has been built around the campaign in order to understand these strategies for community philanthropy, getting closer to the groups. And something, an interesting thing that we have seen is that, in fact, the field of community philanthropy are in dialogue, talking about environmental education from an emancipating critical perspective that is engaged in strengthening what the communities have already been doing, both in terms of practice as well as values, and working then in terms of transparency, reciprocity, dialogue. These have been some of our learnings. And last year, in 2022, it hasn't been wrapped up. It has been continued in a context of a climate emergency perspective. Since, based on what happened here in the beginning of this year, in February, in order to think about this campaign, the research has helped us think about these strategies in changing. Last year, for example, we already had 3 collectives that had been defined in the dialogue in terms of supporting this campaign, strengthening these collectives, and now the campaign this year in the restoration of the north of São Paulo, Fumbeia, along with this team that is more involved with the research, tried another research strategy, rather, that is going to choose some leaderships and movements in the region that are involved in that sense. And this group, for example, who is going to receive the research? So this have been some of the findings in donation circles that have helped us think about these changes. Because what I have realized in this research is that it is still an experimental field, particularly support to non-formal groups. Fumbeia these are collectives that would have access to resources otherwise. So I think that this research that shows that it is possible and that these collectives have been doing a lot for the region where of their It demonstrates that indeed it is a legitimate work. So I think it's going to strengthen this debate. I think for now, that's it. Thank you. So bringing this proximity of engagement of these horizontal relationships and formalizing them, I think it's this trust. It's a key project when we are talking about community philanthropy.
E aí eu queria aproveitar e fazer esse gancho com o segundo bloco, né, que é justamente sobre a tradução de práticas de filantropia comunitária e de grant making para a justiça social.
Second block is going to be about grant making, the importance of grant making for the social philanthropy. I would like to bring Kleber to reflect a little bit about that, particularly based in the experience of the Brumadinho Fund. They are different setting of practices, knowledge. So the program had the opportunity for us to shed light in those kind of initiatives, this complexity. We cannot put social environmental justice and community philanthropy in one only box, but we identify some practices and principles that are important in all of these discussions. Kleber, I would like to listen a little bit from you, which are the main characteristics and mechanisms of this fund that you investigate, that you researched, and how it is different from more traditional philanthropic practices. And after that, we're going to see the video by Cassius and his work. Well, when I started research, the recovery fund for Brumadinhos, I had no idea that it was so broad with so many transversalities and that it would be so important for the community. In my mind, I had no idea of what this process was. And when I started research and try to understand all the mechanisms that this recovery fund has, I realized that it was much more work than I thought. The step-by-step was much larger, the processes, the mechanisms were and are very, very specific processes to a specific territory. So the idea was, is this a way of doing community philanthropy like it was done in Brumadinho, if it was possible to be translated to other territories? So before I talk about what I found, I'm going to talk about Brumadinho. The Recovery Fund is born from this crime, the crime by Vale, with the breakage of this dam, Vale do Feijão, where hundreds of people lost their lives, and an international problem with violences that reached other states like Espírito Santo, etc., because of the rivers and the crime over the rivers. 24 hours after this tragedy, our city was starting trying to get funds to send to these communities and help. So it was resources were donated to this region, and later is materialized in support for small projects in that territory. In that terrible problem, in the terrible moment, that was a mourning in the country for this tragedy that once more was happening. We're talking from Minas Gerais, where the mining companies are working so intensely, and these dams are very, very common. And we have others that are with alert warnings that may break due to the accumulation of dejects that are in these dams. The idea was to systematize that and say how it was done, how was the conversation with the territory happen. Our organization is not really in Brumadinho, but we have associates that are from Brumadinho, and how it was done, who would determine what was going to be supported or not. So based on all these questions, there were many working groups in our city and our community. So there is a curating circle that is people from the territory, men and women from the territory who live in the territory, that are social uh, leaders in the territory who decide. And there is, and that's always an attempt to bring always new members. This is totally the community decide which projects are supported, and they are responsible to communicate about these projects within the territories. They say, do you know that we have a fund that supports small projects from Brumadinho? And so this project comes to the hands of these curators through a platform that is used since the beginning, and we decided to use the same one we started with because it was a very simple way and not so much bureaucracy. Three questions basically: who is the person, which is the project, which they think are the impacts of these projects in the community, what they hope for, and how this network of support can help this project to be uh, can be continued and perpetuated for many years. And because our support is only one time with low values, only 3,000 reais, but we can see that in the territory it has a major impact because these are projects written by the community, written by themselves. But when we put a lens to observe where the impact was caused, we can see that it's giant with very good practices that causes. And I learned that with Mari, it's difficult to talk about impact within the community because only the community can talk about the impact that's being caused. What I could realize talking to the residents of Brumadinho is that this impact reverberates inside the community. So I was very happy and very enthusiastic about the results that this research brought to me. I think to start the conversation, that's it. Thank you, Kleber, to reinforce that we wanted to bring just some general reflections, but our intention is to invite you who are listening to us to get to know more about the project, to participate of the activities. We are going to have many things happening, launching of new products. This is just a little bit of giving you a little flavor for you to know more about the initiatives. I think what you brought is just that what you brought, the context of this fund was based in a crime. The agenda of access to rights was the key. We are talking about companies that they uh, they carry on environmental crime, and we are talking about people who suffer with that crime and needs their rights to be met in a dignified way. And the way you mention about the community engagement is wonderful. When we talk about this, we have to talk about resources. We have to talk about money for these initiatives and for these territories and communities. But we also need to value and recognize that within the territory, there are many other resources, networks, skills, the time that strengthens this works. I'm going to share about this reflection of Cássio that is going to talk a little bit about mechanism of micro project.
Rede Comuá.
Let's see if we can show the video.
Nossos focos de análise foram
Our analysis focus were some grants that were announced for micro projects that SPM launched and support along with indigenous communities and rural communities in Maranhão and Tocantins. What are micro projects? Are supports with a value that is reduced. That was in our grants were 2 to 5,000 reais, focused to support families or individuals or small groups with very low level of bureaucracy demands for accountability, etc. And these resources could be transferred directly to the a bank account of individuals. Was not necessary to have organizational legal entities to execute these resources. The idea of these micro projects was to leverage activities that was organized by these families, but it was connected to what we call eco-social landscapes to contribute for the well living of these communities, but at the same time would be engaged in the environmental conservation. So they were supported productive activities, for example, for gardens, the raising of small animals, cultural activities like parties, exchange, visit, small activities that are conducted are by families or individuals that together contributed to the well living, for the well-being of the community and serving as inspiration for other people and families. Despite the fact that this resource is considered limited and the global impact, this way of making philanthropy has many advantages and is powerful. It works with the self-esteem and the trust of these families. So one of the things that we verified, that despite the low level of bureaucracy, these supports also had low level of lack of realization. Practically all of the initiatives were carried on. This work with the self-esteem of the people, of the families. It animates the people to carry on these activities. And another point, by supporting families and their activities, these initiatives ended up incentivizing the reciprocity networks in the community. So sometimes a project that was just focused to one garden, to one production, end up activating collective work, exchange, collaboration amongst the families in that community. And just to mention some of the cultural activities, they also work with the strengthening of the identities. Some of these initiatives support the festivals that were not being had not been carried or realized for many years. So we thought it was a very effective and interesting mechanism to do philanthropy, affecting in the level of the family of the individual, really raising the self-esteem and the trust among the members of the families and the communities.
Perfeito. É uma satisfação
Perfect.
poder estar aqui com a gente.
Is a pity that
Aproveitando essa
Cassius cannot be
oportunidade,
here
pouco
with
conhecer
us,
mais
but
da
I would
iniciativa
like
do
I'll
mini
put
documentário
his work
do ISPM,
here,
e um dos
a
projetos
mini
que no caso
documentary
fez a
video
avaliação
of the
dos
SPM of one of the
guerreiros da
projects
floresta,
that he evaluate
Caru,
the
principalmente no
guerreiras,
Brasil,
the
onde foi
women
realizada
warriors
a
of the
experiência. Mas
forest
o Cássio ele
in
traz
this
também outros pontos que são bem
territory.
interessantes,
Cassius
ainda mais
brought
também
also
iniciando um
some
comentário com a
interesting
Joana na
points,
caixinha, que
and
justamente
Joanna
fortalecização
has
e da democratização do
commented,
acesso a recursos,
you know,
né? Isso a
so
gente
the
viu também no mapeamento que a
democratization
gente
of
realizou na
access
semana
to the
passada junto com a
resources.
Ponte a Ponte.
And we
Algumas
saw
coisas
that
muito
in
independentes,
Ponte a
né?
Ponte last
Que
week,
dividiram com essas
how the
atividades
independent
sociais,
philosophy
socioambientais
is
e comunitários,
committed with
não
these
necessariamente de
agendas of the social development,
de facilitar o
of
acesso
the
a recursos, de diminuir a
to
burocracia
find
para
mechanisms to
esses projetos
facilitate the
comunitários e de
access to the
assentamentos,
resources,
né? E de como
kind of
também
taking away
existem
some of
áreas que
these
nessa defesa
uh,
comunitária, né?
uh,
Em alguns momentos
hurdles
nós
that
percebemos
they
que
find on the
fez um
way.
impacto muito grande não só
So with
monetário,
the
mas
case
também esses pequenos
during the
recursos
pandemic,
presenciais, o
this
fortalecimento
small resources made
desses grupos, né?
possible
Então isso também são
the
iniciativas interessantes
strengthening
para
of
que a
these
gente
groups, and these are
destacar.
very interesting
E agora a gente pode ir
initiatives
para o
for us
terceiro
to think
bloco, né?
about.
Queria chamar
And
a
going
Jess
now to the
e o
third
Ronaldo
block, I would
para a
like to
gente
invite
compartilhar aí
Jess and
um pouco da
Ronaldo, because we are going
desses debates
to
sobre a filantropia que não só têm
now
impacto na educação
focus what
periférica,
are these
né? E que
debates in
são
the philanthropy
institucionalizados,
that are not
historicamente
being made,
invisibilizados,
that are
né? Então o programa
historically
teve o
made
objetivo de
invisible.
promover esses
So the
debates
program
e
had
reflexões,
the
mas
goal
também a
of
gente percebeu
promoting this
também de uma
debate
forma
and the
vivenciar
production
essas
of this
práticas
knowledge to
pelos
make
não-profissionais,
evident these practices,
nas comunidades
topics,
pelas famílias,
dynamics in
que muitas vezes são
in the
esquecidas quando a gente
communities
fala de
around the
profissionais que
country
realmente
that
buscam
many
conhecimento
times
sobre o campo,
are
né?
neglected
Como se essas
by the
pessoas
traditional
que buscam
philanthropy
lidar
and by the
com a
production
filantropia,
of
com esse
knowledge
conhecimento, não
in
fizessem
the
a mesma
field.
coisa,
Like
né?
these
Mas na verdade
territories would
é uma
not
história de
be
resistência
producers of knowledge,
de
but what we
práticas,
see
né?
is a
Sociais
history of
de justiça
resistance,
que estão morando na Amazônia, que são muito
ancestral
ancestrais, que foram
practices,
desenvolvidas
and
por esses grupos,
ancestral
com esse propósito de
technologies that are
resistir ao
developed by these
colonialismo, ao
groups
racismo,
to
e até
resist
mesmo
to
discriminação,
colonialism, to
violência,
racism,
né? Então
and
seria
other
interessante
forms
também
of
que a Jess
violence
falar um pouco
and
sobre isso,
discrimination. So I would
e um
like to
pouquinho da
invite
visão de vocês de
Jess and
como é
Ronaldo
a
to
ótica
talk a
desses
little bit
grupos
about
e
that,
agendas,
and
né? E
why
como
in
vocês veem
your
os seus
the way
projetos,
you
né? As
see
suas
why
pesquisas
the
e
traditional
a
philanthropy does
filantropia de
not
vocês
look at this
aprecia
field, and how your projects
né?
can help
Afetar esses grupos e
to the
práticas
traditional
né?
philanthropy to
Tradicionais.
mobilize resources towards these
Jess, podemos falar?
invisible groups and practices.
Sim, sim.
Jess.
Bom, Jonatas,
Well,
na minha
Jonathan,
pesquisa, mas também
in
ao
my
longo da minha
research, but also
experiência nos
along my
movimentos
experience
de mulheres negras
in
e
the
movimentos
movements
onde
of
eu pude
Black
circular,
women's movements and
para
Black
mim se
youth
entende cada
movements,
vez
it
mais
was
de
very
que
clear for
há
me
muitos
that
avanços, né?
there are
Como a gente
many
tem
advances.
avanços aí no campo da
We
filantropia,
are
mas
seeing
eles são as
advances in
tentativas
the philanthropy
de
field, but
são tentativas
there
de se
are
reconhecer, né?
attempts
Enquanto um
to
tipo de
recognize
acompanhamento de
itself as
processos
a
históricos,
field
processos
of acting
colonialistas, né?
that are
Então,
permeated
aí
by
eu percebo que há ainda uma
colonialist
dificuldade de se reconhecer
processes.
enquanto
So
parte do
there
problema, ao mesmo
is
tempo que
is
faz
difficult to recognize itself as part of the
essa
problem.
ponte, né,
At the
para
same
sanar
time
esses
that
problemas
it
estruturais.
tries
Então,
to make a
tem
bridge
aí
to
uma
solve
complexidade
these
muito grande, né?
structural problems. So
Mas
that's a
a
big
gente precisa
complexity on that.
entender
But we
que
have to
a gente
understand
vive
that we
nesse
live
verde do racismo
under the structural, institutional racism and xenophobia, these different kinds of discriminations that at the same time that we try to find, we reproduce at the same time, particularly in the traditional philanthropy, they look at that, but when we see the praxis, we see the difficult to name part of this problem so they can step back and open the space so other voices can be heard and can be recognized. So I believe that the agendas of these organizations that are historically made invisible, they propose a radicalism, what is to be in the world, and this and to act in this world. And they are not used to that because they have still a very philosophical premise of philosophy that comes from a Christian base that's very elitist from this philosophical point of view, that don't understand that it's not a charity process, but to recognize populations that historically built these countries under many violences and absence of the humanities. So I believe, and I believe even more after I heard the 5 leaderships that I heard, that this radicalism is that's too strong. Some funders may think it's interesting, but for others, maybe a little bit scary. So I think that decolonialism, that we need to decolonize the philanthropy, we have to recognize this how this organization execute its money and how they see itself in the future, because we are talking about future and not about a 12 months project that has a beginning, middle, and end. These institutions don't want that, as my colleagues has shown, and also research from Comuá network, from PIPA. It shows evidence of how much these organizations do with little money. And these organizations are tired of making a lot with little money because it's exhausting. Like, for example, Imena, the Institute of Black Women of Amapá, still don't have their own headquarters because they don't have a resource to do that. And they only work because they have older Black women and that women who have jobs that have public jobs, but the youth cannot give this kind of dedication because they need to work and they need to study and work. They cannot dedicate to exclusively to a project that doesn't pay them. So the existence of these organizations are also in jeopardy when we talk about recognize their place, recognize their work. And this reverberates in the distribution of the resources, how much resource we are investing here or not. And just to close, I believe that my project is going to make evident these narratives that are not well seen, we're looking for, where it is going to make that we want that more institutions from the Southeast get to know the Instituto Dara from Bahia, the SEDEMPRA from Pará, a Biomi in Paraíba, or the Institute of Black Women, Piauí, or Imena in Amapá. These are organizations that have crucial contributions for the institutions in the field of philanthropy that has genuine interest in change the philanthropy field. And they are they have evidence of over 10 years with their institutions, and they can bring to their territories and their space to be able to access other perspectives. So I believe in this. Yes, thank you.
Muito obrigado, Jazz. Acho que isso foi
Thank you, Jess. I think this was surgical.
acho que de destacar assim da sua
In
fala,
many points, I would like to emphasize exactly what we are talking about
ato político, né? A gente
in
lembrando
terms of the
que
political act.
lembrado
Donating
político, né?
needs to be reminded.
Doar recursos,
Philanthropy needs to be reminded of its philanthropic role for these organizations, not donating,
mantenham seu
making
enfim,
viable
é realmente uma
for these organizations to continue their work. It's a political
filantropia não
decision. What
grupos
is
de mulheres, como você
the
falou,
country we are talking about?
né? E agora eu queria
And now I would like to bring Ronaldo.
Ronaldo aqui de volta. Ronaldo, queria ouvir um pouco.
Ronaldo, I would like to hear a little bit about your reflections regarding these questions.
Então, o microfone é seu.
So the microphone is yours. Right when I was about to speak, we can only have then access through mobile data, but we are in the struggle. So the question is why? Why these populations are rendered invisible? What I'm stating here is the people who are in terreiros. Since I was writing the project, I have no doubts about the importance of the role of community. And since when we were violently sequestered and brought here, we, the people who live the realities in terreiros, we know that terreiros are the spaces in which people come for health care, for food, for supporting one another. It is a mechanism, psychological mechanism. It is a mechanism of cultural development. And if we were to use the terms that are common, this is a social technological tool that sustains the life of a large majority of the population in this territory for centuries. And the philanthropic movement itself recognizes that when we, for example, see older publications for in the field of social justice, and we see the practice of fundraising in order to buy many mission letters to be considered by this network one of the first formats of mobilization, resource mobilization. Hence, the network claims and within its concept, it incorporates these practices that have belonged to us. But then, when we seek to understand to what extent this has been, this understanding may be transformed into community interventions, and for the question, the reason, when you bring this issue of the reason,
Ronaldo, seu áudio está
in,
falhando aqui pra gente.
in order to speak
Desculpa,
about
atrapalhou bastante.
the deepest reason why is that this way, this technology, this social technology, it belongs to, it is as though we are trying to have two rhythms combined.
te ouvindo, Ronaldo.
Tá conseguindo me ouvir agora?
Sim, a gente te escuta, melhorou.
Alô? Consegue ouvir? Massa. Os primeiros, a forma de organização que
The ways of organizing that
Agora perdemos seu áudio, Ronaldo. Você consegue escutar a gente? Ronaldo, você consegue escutar a gente? Ah, ele caiu agora. Então acho que a gente segue aqui para o próximo bloco, aí quando...
so then we should follow
mais
to
uma
the
fala
next
do Ronaldo,
section,
e aí
and we're
a
gonna
gente
have the
também
chance to
sobre
listen to Ronaldo, and I'm
reflexão
gonna
que
ask him
trazendo
to
pra gente.
take back,
Então, para a gente seguir,
to pick
a
up
gente
where
ia
he
falar agora
left
justamente sobre essa
from.
contribuição do
And we were
Comuá
going
nos
to talk
projetos de
about this
restituição
very
e produção de projetos
contribution
e
of
pesquisas para as comunidades e
the research
territórios.
projects
Né? E
for
de que
communities
maneira
and territories, in
os
what ways
participantes aqui do programa conseguem
the participants of this
vislumbrar esse
program
papel
are
da
able
produção de
to
conhecimento
visualize this
para
role of
transformações
knowledge
sociais, de que
production
maneira eles viram ela
for
vivenciando
social
isso também
transformation,
nas
how
comunidades e
this has
territórios para
been
quem trabalhava.
perceived in
Acho que alguns dos
communities
textos a
and
gente já ouviu,
territories where
alguns já foram
he
trazidos na
worked. I
fala, mas
think
eu queria
that
chamar aqui de
some
novo
of
a
them
Larissa para
I
contar um
would
pouco
like
como é que
to
foi sua
ask
experiência,
Larissa
então,
in order to
com o
narrate
litoral
this
norte de São Paulo.
experience with the
Pode ser, Larissa? Vou começar com você.
north of São Paulo. Let me speak
Obrigada,
to you.
Jonatas, pela palavra.
Thank you,
Eu acho
Jonatas.
que um primeiro ponto assim também que é
I
legal de
think
pensar
that
sobre o
the
Programa
first
Saberes,
issue,
que também eu acredito muito nessa produção de
I
conhecimento
very
feita
much
nos
believe in this
territórios, é
knowledge
a forma como a gente se articulou,
production,
né, enquanto grupo,
and
enquanto
how we
programa,
have articulated
ao
as a
longo dos
group in a
nossos encontros,
program
assim.
over
Então, quando a
our
gente fala
meetings.
sobre a nossa construção do Programa
So
Saberes,
when
tem
we
muito a
talk
ver com essa
about
diversidade de experiências, né, de cada
this
bolsista
diversity of
e da equipe da
experiences
rede,
and
e
the
de
team
vivências, assim. Então, eu acho que
and
quando
the
você pensa
experiences,
que o
and I
território da região do
think
Litoral Norte, que é uma região, né, que tem muito remanescente de Mata
which is a
Atlântica e
region
muita
that
área
have many
preservada, né, de Mata
people
Atlântica, tem uma
in
diversidade muito
Atlantic
grande sociocultural.
region
Mas,
in
ao
a
mesmo
very
tempo,
big
é uma região que ela
social
vem sofrendo
cultural
cada vez
diversity,
mais
but it
muitas
is a
pressões,
region that
assim,
is
né, por
also
empreendimentos,
under
agora
pressure,
nessa questão também mais grave, né,
real estate
desse
speculation
enfrentamento
in a more
às
serious
mudanças, à
issue of
emergência
confronting
climática. Então, tem muitas
climate
populações e
change,
comunidades
many
em áreas de
populations
risco.
in
Então,
risk
muito ligado
areas,
também a essa
and
temática de se
also
pensar
linked with
sobre o
this
racismo
theme of
ambiental, né?
thinking
Que
about
são as pessoas
environmental
que mais
racism,
sofrem quando acontece um tipo de deslizamento, né, de terras.
when some
E
landslides
como,
take place,
assim, diante desse cenário, desse
and
contexto aqui da
how
região,
within
os
this
coletivos daqui,
scenario
eles vão sendo resistência mesmo, né? Então, cada um
we
em uma forma de
become
articulação, né?
resistant,
Seja mais por meio da arte, da cultura, de
be it
próprias
in
também
art
iniciativas de educação ambiental, os
and
coletivos vão sendo
initiative.
resistência contra tudo isso. E aí eu acho que a produção de conhecimentos, de saberes, nessa perspectiva, vai mostrando
And
os
the knowledge
campos, né?
production
As
in this
maneiras que cada
perspective
coletivo,
shows
cada
the
grupo
how, the
vem
ways
desenvolvendo de enfrentamento e resistência à defesa
um,
mesmo, né? Da vida, do
in
meio ambiente,
defending life,
da cultura popular.
the environment,
Então eu acho que
popular,
essa
the
perspectiva da
culture of
produção de
the
conhecimento,
community culture,
considerando
and this
diversidade também de
production, knowledge
experiências, de
production,
saberes, de
considering the
vivências
diversity of
no
experiences
território, ela
in the
potencializa muito
territory,
outras possibilidades
strengthen other
de ser e
possibilities
estar no
of
mundo, né?
being
Então,
in this
eu
world.
acho que é uma maneira de
And I
trazer cada
believe
vez
it is
mais
a
essas
way of
pautas
bringing
de
more and
o
more
que
these
é um
agendas.
desenvolvimento sustentável, né? A gente está falando
What
sobre o
is
desenvolvimento para quem? Qual é a
sustainable
finalidade, né?
development
Qual é o
for whom?
objetivo? Então, eu acho que produzir conhecimento nesse campo
Therefore,
e investigar
producing
essas
knowledge in
maneiras
this
que,
field
né, os coletivos já
and
vinham fazendo
investigating these
tem
ways that the collectives
essa
have been
perspectiva muito forte,
doing
né?
has this strong perspective.
Perfeito, Lari, obrigado.
Thank you,
Você
Lara.
traz aí pontos importantes com isso, mostrar os comos, né, e que desenvolvimento sustentável para quem.
And
Então, a gente
sustainable
trazer
development
essas agendas,
for
a
whom
gente
is
trazar
an
também uma
important
consciência
point that you have
socioambiental,
raised.
né, pensar que se a gente está falando de um contexto de emergência
And if we are talking of a context
né, do que outros, né,
of climate
nesse,
change,
nessa dinâmica, né, nesse cenário que a gente se encontra, nessa
there
emergência
are
que a gente
groups
se encontra
that
agora.
are
Então, a gente
more
precisa
affected,
problematizar e trazer, né,
and we need
evidências.
to then
Então,
raise
acho
issues
que
and
são
bring
pontos
evidence about
muito
that.
chaves para a gente. Ronaldo, você está ouvindo a gente bem agora? Já entrou no segundo bloco,
Ronaldo, I'm listening to
você
you.
termina o seu raciocínio,
You
pode
can
fazer o
finish
gancho com a
your
pergunta
thinking
também
and
sobre
you
produção de
can
conhecimento,
then link to the next
que
question
significou
about
do terreiro também.
knowledge
Vamos lá.
production.
Tá bom, eu vou finalizar de forma resumida,
I'm
como eu
going
estava falando,
to,
né? O que eu percebo, o que eu entendo e o que eu
what I
tenho
realize and my
ouvido,
understanding,
né,
what
nas
I've seen,
entrevistas com outros
what I've been
CCRs
hearing
que eu venho
in interviews
fazendo,
with other
é
high
que
priests I've been speaking to,
existe um
there is
descompasso
a
entre a forma
disconnection
como
between
os
the way
recursos distribuídos e como os territórios
these discourses
podem
are.
ter acesso
Ronaldo, o áudio está falhando de novo. Talvez se tirar
eles,
o vídeo.
eles têm que assumir.
They have to take on.
Agora tá ouvindo?
Agora melhorou.
Tá melhor? Pronto.
Is it
Então
better
existe um
now?
descompasso muito grande entre a forma como os terreiros se organizam
So there
e
is a
as exigências, as demandas
disconnection in
feitas
terms
pelos
of the
financiadores
demands and the readings that funding agencies
nos editais, por exemplo.
manifest in their
Inclusive,
calls for
vários
proposals.
sacerdotes de
And
casas antigas manifestaram
several high priests
inclusive
have
de casas que conservam
been
ainda
really
terrenos, que criaram
unhappy,
suas ONGs 20 ou 30
although
anos
they
atrás,
may
mas que
have been
demonstram
able
grande
to create their
insatisfação com esse
NGOs,
movimento de ter que se
register
adaptar,
their
de ter
NGOs,
que
but
se
this movement
mascarar
are
como uma
having to
organização
adjust
de
and mask
sistema que é
themselves as an
branco, racista e
organization of
tal,
the system, of a white
e ter
racist
acesso
system,
a recursos para poder
in order
combater justamente o
to
sistema que é branco, que é racista.
combat this
Né?
white racist system.
Então, o que vem se manifestando nas
So what has
entrevistas é a
been evinced
necessidade de haver não só uma
in these
mudança,
interviews is the need to have
um
not
dos
only a
financiadores em
change of
relação a isso,
perspective in the
mas
funding
também
agencies around that, but
um
also
processo através do qual a gente possa
a
criar
process through which we
mecanismos
may create
diretamente voltados
mechanisms, develop mechanisms that are
para o
geared
apoio
towards
a essas ações comunitárias de
supporting
terreiro,
these
né?
community
Então,
interventions in terreiros.
enfim,
Perhaps
precisa desenvolver essa discussão e eu acho
it's
que não dá para me
necessary to
delongar muito
develop
aqui.
this debate, and
E
I
aí,
may
entrando
not
já
have enough
no
time
segundo
to talk
bloco, na
about it
questão do
here. And in
produção de
the second
conhecimento,
issue of knowledge
está sendo
production,
bastante importante ter a oportunidade de
it has
desenvolver
been
essa
very
pesquisa,
important to have the
porque
opportunity
se
of
não for a gente
developing
para
this
levantar essas
research, because
questões,
if
para
we don't
formular
do
essas
that,
perguntas, para pensar que mecanismos a gente
to
vai
think
criar, não vai ter
about
ninguém.
what mechanisms
O
we
fato é
are
que essa
going
discussão está
to
chegando aqui agora porque a gente
create,
está conseguindo chegar, né?
we are getting here
E
because
aí
we
a
are
gente tem
able
que
to
agora
get
conseguir
here,
crescer nesse
and we
processo.
need to
Então,
be able to
continuar questionando, continuar elaborando, né?
grow in this process,
Sabendo
trying
que,
to
como o Jess
elaborate.
falou, né? A gente
And
está falando de
as Jess
futuro.
has stated,
E eu
we are
gosto muito
talking
de falar
about futures.
de
And
pensar e de dizer que a gente está
I
falando
like
de
to think
reconstruir os
about
nossos povos, né? De
what we
reconstruir
have been
a nossa noção de
reconstruction
povo,
in terms of our notion
que nos foi
of
negada,
people
né? E que nos é negada.
that has been denied to us
Então, eu acho que
and that has
continuar
been denied
produzindo
to us. So
conhecimento sobre
producing
as ações
knowledge
comunitárias
about
dos povos negros, dos povos indígenas,
community
dos
interventions
povos de
for
terreiro,
indigenous
de
people and
outras
people in
comunidades
terreiros and
tradicionais que no
other
Brasil
traditional
formalmente existem mais
communities
de
that
20
in
tipos de
Brazil
comunidades
formerly we have
tradicionais e eu acredito que
20
existem até muito
different types
mais.
of community traditional
Essa produção de
communities, and I
conhecimento ela é
believe there
fundamental
may
para a gente
be much
conseguir
more.
avançar
This
assim para influenciar
knowledge production is important
a rede que
in
usa
terms
o
of
ecossistema que
influence
já
the
existe, ou seja, para a rede
ecosystem that
também
already exists,
criar os nossos próprios
be it
sistemas.
in creating our own systems through that
Perfeito,
or from
Ronaldo,
that
muito obrigado. Acho que
starting
você
point.
falou
Thank you, Ronaldo. I
bastante.
think
Acho que não
you have
consigo
expressed
nem
everything. I don't think
acrescentar
I
nada
can
mais, de
even
fato.
add
A
anything
reflexão que
to
fica,
what
né,
you've
que eu
said, and this
trouxe,
is
né, com
the
essa sua fala,
reflection
é
that
isso,
remains.
focar nesses mecanismos
In
que a
what ways do
filantropia
these mechanisms that
ainda implementa,
philanthropy
né, estão ainda
still
reproduzindo
implements,
violências,
are
né,
they still
contra esses
reproducing
povos
violences
tradicionais.
against these
Então, acho
people,
que foi um
traditional
convite que queria
people?
reforçar
I
depois
think
dessa
it's an
sua fala,
invitation that I
justamente
wanted to
para quem
enforce
estiver
here
aqui do campo da filantropia,
for anybody who's here in the field of philanthropy in order to rethink these tools in order to not continue following up with this reproduction. And I'm going to share here the video in which Cassio comments on this question about knowledge production.
A ideia de realizar
The notion of organizing of this analysis and the systematization, it's an idea that we've had for a long time with the ESPN organization in the sense of demonstrating their effectiveness and contributions within a broader body of support to projects and communities and philanthropy, social philanthropy in that sense. And our hypothesis, our work hypothesis has been accurate in the sense that with these mechanisms of micro projects, although we have a very low level of demands of it demands and bureaucracy, which is not often accepted by funding agencies. It hasn't been transformed in a non-realization of activities, very much in the contrary. Some initiatives of this support, limited support in light of the volume of resources in terms of these communities that ended up being strengthened. And we understand that this analysis, this systematization, demonstrates the effectiveness of the mechanism for micro-project support. And this generation of knowledge, I believe it allows us to inspire institutions, adequate, adjust the ways they develop philanthropy, incorporating micro projects with their characteristics and strength, and also it supports in demonstrating to partners the effectiveness and confiability or reliability of this. And it allows us that there is a demonstration of the results, concrete results in practice of these micro projects, demonstrating that actually this supports that even if we have a small volume of resources from the perspective of projects, but large in terms of the families that have received these fundings, it promotes social change, dynamics within the communities that are very important. So generating knowledge is very important for generating this movement in the field of organization and philanthropy in order to demonstrate the effectiveness of this mechanism.
Perfeito. Agora, para a gente entrar no último bloco, antes do encerramento, queria
And to
convidar.
start the last block before the closing, I would like to invite Kleber. We are going to talk about individual perspective from each one of the scholarship holders to tell about what their individual perspective was, and seeing you in the beginning of the program and now I would like for you to share with us. So I would like for you to speak in 3 minutes, just for a matter of time. I've started very raw. I didn't understand much, almost nothing about community philanthropy. All terms were new. Community philanthropy for social justice was something I never heard of. But during the research, as a researcher, during the meetings with the knowledge program, with the Programa Saberes monthly, it was created an identity, a power, making it clear everything that was happening. I grew really as a researcher, as professional during this 10, 11 months. I could put my experience, my expertise in this, and was the opportunity to create many products, but also what was the community philanthropy, for what I understood, could reflect in the social philanthropy. We created ebook, interviews, and this brought for me a belonging as a professional. I understood that I was having the opportunity to scale up what I had an opportunity to do as a young researcher. I only have to thank. I think the process helped to form myself, my professional identity, and this may be common for other people, usual. But since after I heard Jazz and Ronald talking about, it may be common to some people, but for Black youth, homosexuals from favelas, this come to reach this part of our lives with due to the structural racism, due to exclusion process that we suffer. We have this part is weaker, and I came like that. But after 10, 11 months, I feel much more, I feel stronger. I feel I feel able to assume this project that I get involved with this research of the recovery, of the systematization of the recovery fund of Brumadinho.
Obrigado,
Thank
Kleber.
you,
A
Jonathan.
gente fica feliz também de ver que
Thank
você
you, Kleber. We are
se
also
sente
happy
honrado também
to
de ter
see this process and follow that.
Mari, eu queria
Makes us
convidar
very
você para
honored.
comentar um pouco sobre
I
a
would like
questão
to
da
call
flexibilidade de recursos,
Mari
né? Foi um ponto
to
também que
talk
você
about
discutiu
the
no
flexibility
seu
of the
programa.
resources
Então,
that
cada
we
participante aqui recebeu
each
um valor,
participant
né, que foi usado para pesquisa, e esse
received
valor
one
vai
amount
para
that
eles
was used for the
autodecididem,
research,
decidir como esse
but
valor
they
vai
have
ser
total autonomy
distribuído
to
para
decide
pesquisa,
how they would
remuneração,
use this
os gastos com
along the
mobilizações,
research
enfim.
for self
Então, eu queria pedir para você
payment, for
comentar
other
só um
expenses.
pouquinho
So I
sobre
would like for you to,
flexibilidade
in 3 minutes, to
da
talk to us a little bit
socioambiental
about the
no
flexibility
processo
of the use of these
de conhecimento,
resources
enfim.
in the process of knowledge production, for
É a
example.
primeira vez que eu participo de
The
um processo
first thing that
seletivo
I
como esse, porque eu
participate
nunca
in a
fiz um
selective
programa assim,
process
porque eu
as
nunca
this
me
because I
cheguei
never
como pesquisadora.
have
Foi a primeira vez
participated
que eu
in
me
any
encontrei
kind of
nesse mundo.
program because I
E
never
foi
saw
incrível, né?
myself as a
Apesar
researcher,
de
as a
atuar
potential
muito há muito
to
tempo,
produce
quando
knowledge,
você
although I
começa
worked
uma
in
coisa,
this field
você
for a long
existe
time. So
saudavelmente
when
por
you
tempo.
offer
Então, eu participei nesse momento
expressive
atípico,
support for Black
atípico
women,
entre
of
aspas, né?
dark-skinned
E
Black
aí
women
teve projetos sociais.
that
E que é
study by
provedora, esse recurso ele não
affirmative
nasce
actions
hoje.
programs
Esse
that
recurso
is
ele
from the
tem
community,
desde
that
esse recurso ele é multiplicado.
is
Então,
part
ele
of this community. So
né?
this
Ele
resource
é
does not
crescente.
end here.
Se a gente
As
faz
Nina
uso dele com
Silva
abundância, né? Então, é incrível.
said, if you are able to do with the
Essa
scarcity, you can imagine what we can do with
essa premissa de
abundance.
que
So this
a gente
premise
propôs
that
uma coisa
we
que a gente
made a
conhece, né?
proposal that
E a gente
we
tem
know
autonomia para
and we
poder
have
distribuir
autonomy
esse
to
recurso com
distribute
tempo,
this
com
resource
qualidade.
with time
Eu
and
acho que a palavra
quality,
significa
I think
saúde,
that the
né?
word
A gente
means
para de
health.
viver
We
sem. Eu acho que
we
a gente consegue
we don't
ter
suffer
qualidade de vida,
doing as
saúde, a
much.
gente
We
consegue
are
ter
able to have
progresso. Eu
life
estava,
quality, health,
enquanto
and
pesquisadora,
you
eu
have
pude entrar nesse processo também.
we get
Então,
empowered
talvez
in
o
this
grande intuito do
process,
programa
and we can
Saberes, e eu
talk by
sempre
this.
falo nas
So
reuniões e
always say
ratifico isso, por mais que
in
esteja
the
ouvindo, o programa
in the
Saberes e o
meetings and
processo de
ratify
montagem
here
é uma
the Programa Saberes and the approach is an affirmative action. And to talk about us is talking about our life experiences. Is like to invert the logic of the knowledge production. When I wrote the propose, knowing that I was not going to be chosen, I said I'm going to write in what something that I believe, but even if it doesn't make sense for the election committee, I wanted to prove that I want to prove that it's possible to build knowledge with a popular and technical knowledge. And this program has demonstrated that very well. And this shows that this is part of the curriculum when you know well your territory. To bring this issue of flexibility of resources is to talk about our experiences. Philanthropy is not talking about something good, but talking about a struggle that are here for so many years because they are structural problems. And they are structures because they are the most sensitive in our societies. So this philanthropy wants to recognize the power of these communities and this territory because we are not recognized. So there is the perspective is to show the inside out of this story. Thank you, Mari. I would like to listen to Jazz now, that you could share how it was for you to see yourself in this role of a researcher. During the meetings, you brought these reflections to us, and I ask you to share this with this audience who is here today. What did it mean to you? It was, for me, it was a place that was very uncomfortable. I had the same feeling as Mari mentioned. I'm going to apply because I like this proposal, but I'm not going to be selected. So the last time I read, I said, oh, it's terrible, it sucks, but I don't have more time to do as I, so in this process of being approved, of meeting the other scholarship holders, it was this place of being uncomfortable, but it moved an energy that was kind of sleeping because I am the hands-on. I like to execute. When you come with ideas, I'll tell you, oh, we can do this, we can do that. This gives me a lot of energy. But this place of reading or do a more theoretical movement, more methodological movement, is a place that historically in my life, it was denied. So I realized along the time that I was never stimulated to really study, that I was never complimented for how intelligent I was, how interesting was my ideas. When you come to this place to be leader of a researching project that is going to require from you to touch these wounds, and there was a mix of, oh my God, oh, it's delicious. I came to meetings, and I was some meetings I would come and say, I'm freaking out. Is anybody freaking out like me? So it was like one day I'm not going to be able to do, the next day, yes, I'm going to be able to do. It was a process of recognizing that I don't want to be this researcher, this typical researcher that is closed in her space, that either the academy or the office, that goes to seminars, goes to spaces of people like them. This definition that I knew, that is not, doesn't apply to me. So my process was 3 steps back And 3 steps back, after I ended up the interviews, and I told Rede Comuá that the social products that I indicated to you is not going to happen, because I evaluated that I understood that to make an ebook of these narratives would not contribute to the way I thought it would. So I gave these 3 steps back so I can walk further. So the person who's going to talk about their narratives and their perspectives are the interviewed people themselves. I see myself as in the role of connecting, because I access some spaces that they are not um, accessing. I can be this bridge, but I don't want to be the focus. I want to be this bridge because I don't live in the territories. I'm not part of these institutions. I only contribute in a collective way is Black women movement, but living in the territory is much more, is something that they can only speak for themselves. So this is what this months inside the Programa Saberes brought to me. It brought me more confidence of understanding this place that I am and be comfortable with that. Thank you, Jess. When you talking, it was, I kind of saw a video of our conversation. Is amazing what you have. I'm also, to close, I would like to have you saying the final message. Let's start with Kleber. I only have to thank both to you who are watching or will watch in different moments, to thank Comuá Network for the incentive. I think the words of Mari and Jess shows the importance of this project. I think that all of them, but these two are very powerful to show the importance of this program to reach individuals that generally are excluded in this researching process. To congratulate you for this work, and fellow my fellow scholarship holders. I'm very anxious to read everything was produced. I'm sure all of them are going to contribute by my own research, my own life, my own work, and my own community. And I was very, very happy to be able to participate with you. Thank you. Thank you, Kleber. Can you hear us, Ronaldo?
Estou ouvindo sim.
I can hear you.
Então, só agradecer mesmo.
Just to thank.
Eu estou feliz, né, por
I'm
ter a
happy
oportunidade de estar
to
levantando esse
have
debate
the
junto com os meus
opportunity to raise this debate amongst my own people and to be able to confront all these contradictions. I think all of the projects are raising debates that still have a long way to go. So I want to thank, also inviting you to follow up the developments that will come. I have faith that some of these works that are developed here will contribute to transform this scenario and increase the penetration, increase the visibility of people like Mari, Jess, Kleber, me, not ignoring the others, but these are people that in general are out of this process. Much asha in our walking. Thank you. Jess. I also want to thank for all this process, the support. I think you had this brilliant idea and you were very it was very, very important, very important how you really welcome these complexities. I believe that for you, that was another program. It was a different version of the Saberes program that you have. I'm happy that I participated, and I'm very happy that my uh, insecurity did not impede me of applying for that, because this has been so important in my life, and it is an experience that I'll carry with me for
Legal,
life.
Mari?
Thank you all.
Eu
Mari,
participei
please.
do programa Piloto
I've
Saberes
participated also
recentemente.
the program pilot.
E
I participate of this
durante
pilot
as
program of
apresentações,
Saberes.
eu quero daqui
I
estimular, se eu
always
estiver viva, estarei
spoke in
reconhecida,
our
olhar para
meetings.
trás e
In
dizer,
5 years,
nossa,
if I'm
aquela
still
turma, olha
here,
como é que
I'm
tá,
going
olha
to
que
be here saying, oh,
essa
we
então foi
participate in the
uma
first
oportunidade única
group,
que a
the
gente teve,
first
uma
program.
vivência
This
muito
is a
boa. E para
unique
quem está nos ouvindo,
opportunity, a
ouvintes,
wonderful
na verdade, essa
experience.
vocação,
And
inspiração, se inscrevam, gente.
for the
Não
people
deixem
who
os
are
dedos de vocês
listening, if you
não
see
sejam
that,
inúteis a gente
register,
é prova viva disso, a gente
apply,
sabe
we
que
are
os nossos
the
perfis,
proof
enquanto
that
pessoas,
this
demonstraram, né,
our
que
profiles
as
as
nossas
people
fragilidades também,
and
de uma
our
maneira sincera e
fragilities,
honesta, está
and
trazendo
in a
resultados. Eu
very
agradeço
candid
vocês
way we're
por terem
bringing how this
acreditado, não é
process
realmente as nossas
was to
vivências,
us.
não foi,
This was
são
not,
saberes de
this is
vocês.
our
Eu tenho
experiences.
certeza que tem
Please
propostas
apply.
aí
I'm sure
filantropia
that there are
comunitária tem
proposals when we
múltiplas
think
propostas
about
de produção de conhecimento e
community
justiça que podem
philanthropy, struggle
contribuir.
philanthropy.
É um grande
There
desafio,
are
sim,
many
tá?
ways
Então,
that many
agradeço
things
aqui quem
that
está
we
nos
need
ouvindo,
to
quem está nos
know,
escuta,
and many ways
e
for
é
us to
importante trazer pelo
disseminate
lado, falar um
this.
pouco mais sobre as
This
nossas
is my
vivências.
invitation.
Gratidão
The
por esse momento,
podcast is
gente.
in there.
Fico muito
Is in
feliz. Vida
the
longa e
podcast is on
prósperos
as
ventos.
well. Gratitude for all
Obrigado,
and
Mari.
a long
Lari?
life to the Saberes program. Lari, please.
Começar agradecendo também
Also to
todos
start
os
thanking
congressistas, né?
all
Jesse,
the
Mari,
my
Kleber,
fellow
Ronaldo, Cássio.
colleagues, my
Aprendi e
fellow
ainda aprendo muito com vocês.
scholars
Vocês
here.
têm um
I learned
privilégio mesmo assim
and
de
I
receber
learn
aqui.
a lot with
Do lugar de
you.
escuta
It's
também,
a
né? De ouvir as
privilege also to
narrativas.
have this place of
Agradeço a equipe da rede
listening
por
these
isso.
narratives.
E acho que
I thank
fortaleça
that
justamente o trabalho, né? As
the
pessoas
network
interessadas em se inscrever no
to
programa,
this, and
muitas
I
histórias
just
para serem contadas.
reinforce the
Acho que esse novo
invitation of
desafio de ação
Mari,
comunitária
people who are
fortalece também a
interested
voz,
to
né, do
apply.
conhecimento de
This
narrativa no
field
campo da
of the
filantropia
community
e
philanthropy needs to
que
be,
vocês
uh,
realmente, acho
there are
que
many narratives that need to be
silenciem
heard. We have
pesquisadores,
to put the tension in
investigar
this
e por
field,
isso mesmo
and
cursos
you
de
all
extensão. Então, eu acho
feel
que se considerarem esse
incentive
tema, né, de
to
intersecção de
investigate
muitas
this part,
disciplinas, mas
this
que eles tenham esse
commitment
domínio
with
e esse compromisso mesmo, essa
social
responsabilidade
philanthropy.
com justiça social
What
e nos
their commitments
fortalecimento
is
das
with
ações de base, né,
social
do
justice
desenvolvimento
and
comunitário.
empowerment
Então, também estou
of
muito ansiosa
grassroots
para
organizations,
conhecer as
of
próximas
community
gerações, né,
development.
que
So
vão se
I'm also
formando.
anxious
Espero que a
to
gente ainda
get
tenha
to
muitas
know the
trocas
new
juntos, né? Que seja
people
cada
who are
vez mais
coming to the
justamente mesmo
program.
uma rede
And I
agregadora
hope
de
that we
saberes
have
de gerações aí
many,
que a gente vai
many more
expandindo essa rede.
exchanges, and that
Muito
be
obrigada.
this network that
É isso. Obrigado,
perpetuates.
Lari. Feliz demais de estar
Thank
aqui
you,
participando
Lari.
do programa
I'm
com vocês.
very happy to
Saindo um
be
pouquinho do
here.
protocolo, mas acho que
I'm
agradeço
here in the
por
protocol,
essa
but I would like
rede.
to thank
Acho que posso falar pela
the
última vez aqui
Comuá
que foi
network.
um prazer
Um,
enorme acompanhar esse
I
processo com
can
vocês
talk
e
on
conseguir aprender
behalf
também
of
com
the
vocês,
team
ouvir
to
vocês
be here with
e
you,
espero também
to
que essa
build this
rede tenha
program
conseguido
with
honrar
you, to listen to
essa
you.
escuta
I
e
hope we
esse
have been able
aprendizado
to
que a gente
honored
teve ao longo desse
by the
processo e
learning
que de
that
fato
the
acho
network
que
had in this
tem dado
process,
suporte
that we are hoping
e
to
que
build a
foi
strong
um
community
programa assim
of
claramente
people
referenciado
and
no
programs that
país.
really
E aí, para não me
uh,
emocionar muito,
follows much, much
eu
longer.
quero fazer um
And
anúncio especial
so I
no
just wanted
encerramento
to
dos nossos
announce,
minutos finais aqui,
so in our
o
last few
anúncio
minutes,
do ciclo
the
2024
announce
do Programa
is
Saberes,
the
né?
cycle
Hashtag minorias, né?
2024 of Saberes
Então,
program.
para quando?
The
Então, conforme a
hashtag
nossa
is
edição
Vem Aí,
2024 vai ser
where
lançada agora na última semana
is
de
going to be
outubro,
launched
vai
the
ter
call in the
candidaturas para
last
todos
week
os
of
assentos. Então,
October. We are going to receive the applications until end of November. Follow us through the networks, etc. And who are we thinking this for? Again, this is going to be open to the public, but it's really focus and directed to leaderships and professionals of the civil society, researchers, students who work in national territory and who are producing knowledge about community philanthropy and environmental methodology. We are going to prioritize, what the groups that are generally at the edge, like Black, LGBT, and people also that are outside of the centers of São Paulo and Rio. What we looking for? Production of knowledge. People always ask if it's academic research, if people has to have master or whatever. No, it's a diversity that values the different ways of producing knowledge from any different point of view. A report, something academic is possible, but any way of producing knowledge, we want to systematize practice, experiences, realization of events, campaigns, etc. And as Lari said, it has a commitment is related to the environmental social justice and community philanthropy, and how we're going to have this process for registration. We're going to have an online form, and but you have to submit through an online form, and the result is going to be published until the last week of January, and we are thinking for the beginning of the project, the first semester to 2024. This was just a little. I would like to invite you to access this QR code. You can access our podcast, and you can if you access this link, you can listen to this podcast in Spotify or other platforms of audio reproduction. Reinforce the invitation for you to follow this all the events that are happening along this month. In the QR code, you can get the complete programming, but you can see the ones that are still going to be there. Some are gone already, but some we're going to put here in the chat the application for you to register the events of Ronaldo and Marie. And we also have interest, if you have people who may have interest in the program and want to receive the information about the call and what was produced by the and just and then you can we want to thank everyone who is here with us. We understand that the 2 hours is not always easy to do, but my gratitude to the researchers who are here. Was a great pleasure to be with you in this process. To thank for the Comuá team. I'm representing the team here, but it was all a joint construction. Mika, Graciela, Yasmin. Also to thank partners who are here with us, who are building this philanthropy that transforms, funders that made it possible, and many messages were sent here, and I hope this was a good space for reflection, internal reflection, but also a field, a reflection on the field that's valuable for everyone who are here. So our first picture in our event of 10 years of the Comuá network, we have a link that when we announced the this is the scholarship, winners and all of that. But you can access all of that in the web page of the Comuá network. So thank you very much. We close it here, and that's our gratitude to everyone. Thank you all.